Ancient India's gurukuls functioned as elite proving grounds where martial prowess and physical strength served as the primary currency. In this environment, a student's physical capability dictated their entire standing within the social hierarchy. Abhinav stood as the outlier. His frame was frail, his hands lacked the steady grip needed for weaponry, and during wrestling drills, he spent more time in the dirt than on his feet. In a culture where worth is measured by the weight of a sword or the strength of the throw, a physical deficit is treated as a total failure of utility. The pressure reached a breaking point during a high-stakes archery trial. Rajan, the most physically gifted student, stepped up and drove his arrow into the center of the wooden target with ease. Then Abhinav was called forward. As he lifted the heavy bow, his arms shook. The tension of the string was too much for his grip to sustain. The arrow slipped, missing the target completely and snapping against a nearby tree. The response was immediate. Led by Rajan, the other students laughed, claiming that a boy who couldn't scare a squirrel had no place among warriors. Abhinav retreated to the riverbank. Looking at his reflection, he didn't just feel embarrassed, he felt fundamentally broken. He accepted the idea that he was born without the tools needed to succeed. This is the result of outsourcing self-worth to external metrics. When an individual accepts the crowd's definition of strength, a single physical failure leads to a complete mental surrender. Guru Varun Dev offered a new hypothesis. Strength is an internal decision. He mapped the dynamic. Abhinav's peers maximized external power, but had zero internal conviction. By flipping the chart and claiming internal capability first, the external reality eventually has to catch up. He handed Abhinav a small seed, telling him to plant it. It was a physical reminder that belief is cultivated through daily attention, eventually growing into something that can't be easily uprooted. Abhinav was given a new objective. Stop trying to win on the physical scoreboard and start focusing on the only variable he could control, his own response to the challenge. The first opportunity to test this came when the king issued a challenge. A massive, immovable boulder was placed in front of the Gurukul, with a promise of honor for whoever could move it. Rajan and the other elite students threw their weight against it until their muscles burned, but the stone didn't move. Their physical strength had reached its natural limit and failed. When Abhinav stepped up, the laughter returned. Instead of looking at the ground, he kept his eyes on the stone. He wasn't looking for a result. He was testing his own resolve. He pushed until his face turned red, but the rock stayed put. However, when he finally stepped back, he didn't hang his head or avoid eye contact. He stood upright, took a breath, and walked back to his place with his chin up. This reaction changed the dynamic of the trial. By refusing to let the physical failure dictate his emotional state, Abhinav demonstrated that the crowd's mockery no longer had a target to hit. He had separated his effort from his ego. Abhinav began a new daily regimen, hours training with the bow, lifting heavy wooden logs, and running through the forest, focusing on repetition rather than perfection. When he tripped and fell during a sprint, he didn't look around to see who was laughing. He simply stated, "I fell, but I haven't quit," and started running again. By treating every stumble as simple data rather than a personal flaw, he built a mental resilience that his peers couldn't understand. The bullies stopped mocking him, not because he had become the strongest, but because he was no longer providing them with a reaction. Years later, war broke out, and the students were called to the front. Their path was blocked by a massive war elephant, a chaotic force that thrashed through the ranks and paralyzed the advance. Rajan and the other warriors, who had always relied on being the biggest people in the room, were suddenly the smallest. Without the shield of physical dominance, they froze, unable to move against a superior force. This revealed the limit of a purely physical education. Strength that exists only in the muscles disappears the moment it meets something stronger. While the others remained stuck in fear, Abhinav moved forward. He was still physically outmatched by the beast, but his focus remained on the problem rather than the danger. He didn't try to rustle the elephant. Instead, he calmly gathered wood, he quickly lit it, and used the fire to steer the animal away from the path. He solved with a clear mind what the others couldn't solve with their hands. The king honored Abhinav, acknowledging that the most effective force in his army wasn't the one with the biggest muscles, but the one who refused to be intimidated by the scale of the obstacle. Real weakness occurs at the moment a person decides they've already lost. Abhinav proved that when a mind refuses to concede, even an impossible obstacle becomes a tactical problem to be solved.